Well, good evening. Settle down, grab your pitchers of wine, and get cozy because we are reading more Marked Vampire Romance by PC and Kirsten Cast, a mother daughter team. Um, they do other books. Certainly, I think it's PC Cast who's the mother. I wrote, uh, I read something else that she wrote way back whenever I was in university. It was some story where she was iseki'd into another world and she got married to this centaur guy. It wasn't my cup of tea, I must say, particularly whenever they had this scene where they were talking about the Phantom of the Opera and she rewrote it so that the girl ends up with the Phantom. If you've spoilers, if you've never seen or read the Phantom of the Opera, and for anyone who has, that is a terrible rewrite. The Phantom absolutely deserved to be left. I digress. You're here to, you're here for Marked, and so we will start on chapter 7. What time is it? We were walking down a narrow hall that curved gently. The walls were made of an odd mixture of dark stone and jutting brick. Every so often, flickering gas lights that hung from old-fashioned looking black iron sconces stuck out of the wall, giving off a soft yellow glow that was, thankfully, really easy on my eyes. There were no windows in the hall, and we didn't meet anyone else, even though I kept peeking nervously around, imagining my first glimpse of vampire kids. It's nearly 4 a.m., which means classes have been out for almost an hour, Nefrit said, and she was smiling slightly, what I'm sure was my totally shocked expression. Classes begin at 8 p.m. and end at 3 a.m., she explained. Teachers are available until 3:30 a.m. to give students extra help. The gym is open until dawn, the exact time of which you will always know as soon as you have completed the change. Until then, dawn time is clearly posted in all classrooms, common rooms and gathering areas, including the dining hall, library and gym. Nyx's temple is, of course, open all hours, but formal rituals are held twice a week, right after school. The next ritual will be tomorrow. Nefrit glanced at me. Her smile warmed me. It seemed overwhelming now, but you catch on quickly, and your roommate will help, as will I. I was getting ready to open my mouth to ask her another question when an orange ball of fur ran into the hall without a sound and hurled itself into Nefrit's arms. I jumped and made a stupid little squeak sound. I felt like a total retard when I saw it was uh, the orange ball of fur was not a flying bogeyman or whatever, but a massively big cat. Nefrit laughed and scratched the orange ball's ears. Zoe, meet Skylar. He's usually prowling around, waiting to launch himself at me. That's the biggest cat I've ever seen, I said, reaching my hand out to let him sniff me. Careful, he's a known biter. Before I could jerk my hand away, Skylar started rubbing his face in my fingers. I held my breath. Nefrit tilted her head to the side as if she was listening to the words in the wind. He likes you, which is definitely unusual. He doesn't like anyone except me. He even keeps away from the other cats on the end of the campus. He really is a terrible bully, she said fondly. I carefully scratched Skylar's ears, like Nefrit had been doing. I like cats, I said softly. I used to have one. Then my mum got remarried, and I had to give it to the street cats to be adopted. John, her new husband, doesn't like cats. I found that a way a person feels about cats and the way they feel about him in return is usually an excellent gauge of a way to measure a person's character. I looked up from the cat to meet her green eyes and saw that she understood a lot more about freaky family issues than she was saying. That made me feel connected to her, and automatically my stress levels relaxed a little. Are there a lot of cats here? Yes, there are. Cats have always been closely allied with vampires. Okay, Actually, I already knew that. In World History with Mr. Shadox, better known as Puff Shady, but I don't tell him that. We learned that in the past cats had been slaughtered because it was thought that they somehow turned people into vampires. Yeah, okay, talk about ridiculous. More evidence of the stupidity of humans. The thought popped into my head, shocking me by how easily I'd already started thinking of normal people as humans and therefore somehow different than me. Do you think I could have a cat? I asked. If one chooses you, you'll belong to him or her. Chooses me? Nefrit smiled and stroked Skylar, who closed his eyes and purred loudly. Cats choose us. We don't own them. As if to demonstrate what she said was true, Skylar jumped out of her arms and, with a stuck-up flick of his tail, disappeared down the hall. Nefrit laughed. He's really awful, but I do adore him. I think if I would, uh, I think I would, even if he were not part of my gift from Nyx. Gift? Skylar is a gift from the goddess? Yes, in a way. Every high priestess is given an affinity, what you would think of as special powers by the goddess. It's part of the way we identify our high priestesses. These affinities can be unusual cognitive skills like reading minds or having visions or being able to predict the future. Or the affinity can be for something in the physical realm, like a connection to one of the four elements or to animals. I have two goddess gifts. My main affinity is for cats. I have a connection with them, and that is unusual, even for a vampire. Nyx has also given me unusual powers of healing, she smiled, which is why I know you're healing well. My gift told me. Wow, that's amazing, was all I could think to say. My head was already reeling from the events of the past day. Come on, let's show you to your room. I'm sure you're hungry and tired. Dinner will start in. Nefrit cocked her head to the side as if someone was weirdly whispering the time to her. An hour. She gave me a knowing smile. Vampires always know what time it is. That's cool too. My dear fledgling, that is just the tip of the cool iceberg. I hoped her analogy didn't have anything to do with the Titanic-sized disasters. As we continued walking down the hall, I thought about time and stuff, remembering the question that I had started to ask when Schuyler had interrupted my easily derailed train of thought. So, wait, you said the classes start at 8? At night? Okay, yeah, I'm usually not this slow, but some of this was like foreign language to me. I was having a hard time getting it. Hello, Waxoto1517. Welcome to the stream. I don't have Discord, unfortunately, but thank you for coming anyway. Once you take a moment to think about it, you'll understand that having classes at night is only logical. Of course, you must know that vampires, adult or fledgling, don't explode or any other fictional nonsense if subjected to direct sunlight, but it is uncomfortable for us. Wasn't the sunlight already difficult for you to bear today? I nodded. My Moai gyms didn't help much. Then I added quickly, feeling moronic again. Moai gyms are sunglasses. Yes, Zoe, Nefrit said patiently. I know sunglasses. Very well, actually. Oh gosh, I'm sorry, I broke off, wondering whether it was okay for me to say. Would it offend Nefrit, a high priestess, who only wore her goddess mark so proudly? Hell, would it offend Nyx? What about saying hell? It was my favourite cuss word ever. Okay, it was really the only cuss word I used regularly. Could I still say it? The people of faith preached that vampires worshipped a false goddess, and that they were mostly selfish, dark creatures who cared about nothing except money and luxury and drinking blood, and they were all certainly going straight to hell. So wouldn't that mean that I should watch how and where I used Zoe? I looked up to find Nefrit studying me with a concerned expression and realized I'd probably been trying to get my attention whilst I'd been babbling aside my head. I'm sorry, I repeated. Nefrit stopped. She put her hands on my shoulders and turned to me. So we quit apologizing, and remember, everyone here has been where you are. This is all new to all of us once. We know what it feels like, the fear of the change, the shock at your life being turned into something foreign, and not being able to control it, I added quietly. That too. It won't always be this bad. When you're a mature vampire, your life will seem like your own again. You'll make your own choices, go your own way, follow the path down with your heart and soul, and your talents will lead you. If I become a mature vampire, you will, Zoe. How can you be so sure? Nefrite's eyes found the darkened mark on my forehead. Nyx has chosen you. For what, we don't know, but her mark has been clearly placed upon you. She would have touched you, uh, she would not have touched you, only to see you fail. I remembered the goddess's words. Zoe Redbird, daughter of night, I name you my eyes and ears in the world today, a world where good and evils are struggling to find balance, and looked quickly away from Nefrite's sharp gaze, wishing desperately I knew why my gut was telling me to keep my mouth shut about meeting with the goddess. It's just a lot of to all happen in one day. It certainly is, especially on an empty stomach. We started walking again when the sound of a ringing cell phone made me jump. Nefrite sighed and smiled apologetically, then fished a small phone out of her pocket. Nefrite, she says. I listened for a while I saw her forehead wrinkle and then her eyes narrow. No, you were right to call me. I'll come back and check on her. And she flipped the phone shut. Sorry, Zoe, one of the fledglings broke a leg earlier today. Seems she's having trouble resting. I should go back, just to be sure all is well with her. Why don't you follow this hallway around to the left until you come to the main door? You can't miss it. It's large and made of very old wood. Right outside is a stone bench. You can wait there for me. I won't be long. Okay, no problem. But before I'd finished speaking, Nefrite had already disappeared back down the winding hallway. I sighed. I didn't like the idea of being all by myself in a place that was full of vampires and vampire kids. And now that Nefrite was gone, little flickering lights didn't seem so welcoming. They seemed weird, throwing ghostly shadows against the stone hall. Determined not to freak myself out, I started slowly down the direction of the hall. Pretty soon, I wished I'd run into some more people, even if they were vampires. It was too quiet and creepy. A couple of times the halls branched off to the right, but like Nefrite had told me, I kept to the left. Actually, I also kept my nerves to the left, because those other halls, there were hardly any lights in them. Unfortunately, at the next right-hand turn of the hall, I didn't avert my eyes. Okay, so the reason made sense. I heard something. To be more specific, I heard a laugh. It was a soft, girly laugh that, for some reason, made the hair on the back of my neck stand up. It also made me stop walking. I peeked around the hall and thought I saw movements in the shadows. Zoe. My name was whispered from the shadows. I blinked in surprise. Had I heard my name, or was I imagining things? The voice was almost familiar. Could it be Nyx again? Was the goddess calling my name? Almost afraid as I was intrigued, I held my breath and took a few steps into the side hall. As I walked around the gentle bend, I saw something ahead that made me stop and automatically move closer to the wall. In a little alcove not far from me were two people. At first I couldn't make my mind process what I was seeing, and then in a rush, I understood. I should have gotten out of there then. I should have backed silently away and tried not to think about what I'd seen, but I didn't do any of those things. It was like my feet were suddenly heavy and I couldn't pick them up. All I could do was watch. The man, and then with a jolt of additional shock, I realized he wasn't a man, he was a teenager, not more than a year or two older than me. He was standing with his back pressed against the stone of the alcove. His head was tilted back and he was breathing hard. His face was in the shadows, but even though he was only partially invisible, I could see that he was handsome. Another breathy laugh drew my eyes downward. She was on her knees in front of him. All I could see of her was blonde hair. There was so much of it, it looked like she was wearing some kind of ancient veil. Then her hands moved up, running along the guy's thighs. Go! My mind screamed at me. Get out of here! I started to take a step back, and then his voice made me freeze. Stop! My eyes got huge, and for a second I thought he was talking to me. You don't really want me to? I felt almost dizzy with relief when she spoke. He was talking to her, not me. I didn't. They didn't even know I was there. Yes, I do. It sounded as if he was um, grinning or grinding his words from beneath his teeth. Get off your knees. You like it. You know you like it. Just like I know you still want me. Her voice was all husky, trying to be sexy, but I could also hear the whine in it. She sounded almost desperate. I watched her fingers move, and my eyes widened in amazement as she drew the nail of her index finger down his thigh. Unbelievably, her fingernail slashed through his jeans just like it was a knife, and a line of fresh blood appeared, startling in its liquid redness. I didn't want it to, and it grossed me out, but the sight of the blood made my mouth water. No, he snapped, putting his hands on her shoulders and trying to push her away from him. Oh, quit pretending, she laughed again, a mean, sarcastic sound. You know we'll always be together. She reached up with her tongue and licked the blood. I shuddered. Against my will, I was completely mesmerized. Cut it out! He was pushing her shoulders. I don't want to hurt you, but you're really starting to piss me off. Why can't you understand? We're not doing this anymore. I don't want you. You want me. You'll always want me. She unzipped his pants. I shouldn't be here. I shouldn't be seeing this. I tore my eyes from his bloody thigh and took one step back. The guy's eyes lifted. He saw me. And then something truly bizarre happened. I could feel his touch through our eyes. I couldn't look away from him. The girl in front of him seemed to disappear, and all there was in the hallway was him and me and the sweet, beautiful smell of his blood. You don't want me? That's not how it looks now, she said with a nasty purr in her voice. I felt my head begin to shake, forth and back and forth. At the same moment he cried, no, and tried to push her out of the way so that he could move towards me. I ripped my eyes from his and stumbled back. No, he said again. This time I knew he was speaking to me, not her. She must have realized it too, because with a cry that sounded like uncomfortably like a snarl of a wild animal, she started to whirl around. My body unfroze, and in the same instant I turned and ran back down the hall. I expected them to come after me, so I kept running until I reached the huge doors Nefrit had described. Then I stood there, leaning against the cold wood, trying to get my breathing under control so I could listen for the sounds of running feet. What would I do if they chased me down? My head was pounding painfully again, and I felt weak, totally scared, and completely, utterly grossed out. Yes, I was aware of the whole oral sex thing. I doubt if there's a teenager alive in America who didn't and wasn't aware um, that most of the adult public think that we're right. This sentence. I doubt if there's a teenager alive in America today who isn't aware that most of the adult public think we're giving guys blowjobs just like we used to give guys gum, or maybe more appropriately named suckers. Okay, that's just bullshit, and it's always made me mad. Of course, there's girls who think it's cool to give guys head. They're wrong. Most of us with functioning brains know that it's not cool to be used like that. Okay, so I knew about the whole blowjob issue. I definitely never seen one, but that had just been definite. That had definitely freaked me out. But what had freaked me out more than the fact that the blonde was doing the nasty to him was the way I'd responded to seeing the guy's blood. I'd wanted to lick it too, and that just wasn't normal. There was the whole issue about me sharing that weird look with him. What had that been all about? Zoe, are you all right? Hell! I gasped and jumped. Nefrit was standing behind me, looking at me with total confusion. Are you feeling ill? I. My mind flailed about. No way I could tell her what I'd just seen. My head just really hurts, I finally managed to say, and it was true. I had a killer headache. Her frown was full of concern. Let me help you. Nefrit placed her hand lightly over the line of my stitches in the forehead. She closed her eyes, and I could hear her whispering something in a language I could not understand. And then her hand began to feel warm, and it was as if the warmth became liquid, and my skin absorbed it. I closed my eyes and sighed in relief. The pain in my head began to fade. Better? Yes, I barely whispered. She shook her hand away, and I opened my eyes. That should keep the pain away. I don't know why it suddenly came back with such force. Me neither, but it's gone now, I said quickly. She studied me silently for a while I held my breath. Then she said, Anything upset you? I swallowed. I'm a little scared about meeting my new roommate. While technically this wasn't a lie, it wasn't what had upset me, but I was scared about it. Nefrit's smile was kind. All will be well, Zoe. Now let me introduce you to your new life. Nefrit opened the thick wooden door and walked out into the courtyard that fronted the school. She stepped into a large courtyard. Uh, she stepped aside and let me gawk. Teenagers wearing uniforms that somehow looked cool and unique, while still being similar, walked in groups across the courtyard along the sidewalk. I could hear the deceptively normal sound of their voices as they laughed and talked. I kept staring from them to the school, not sure where to gawk first. I chose the school. It was the less intimidating of the two, and I was scared I'd see him. The place that was like something out of a creepy dream. It was the middle of the night, and it should have been deeply dark, but there was a brilliant moon shining above the huge old oaks that shaded everything. Freestanding gas lights housed in tarnished copper fixtures followed the sidewalks that ran parallel to the huge red brick and black rock building. It was 3 stories tall and had a weirdly high roof that pointed up, then flattened at the top. I could see heavy drapes that had been opened and soft yellow lights that made shadows dance up and down the rooms, giving the entire structure an alive and welcoming look. A round tower was attached to the front of the main building, furthering the illusion that the place was much more castle-like than school-like. I swear a moat would not have looked out of place. From across the main building, a smaller one that looked older and church-like. Behind it, the oaks that shaded the schoolyard. I could see the shadow of an enormous stone wall that surrounded the entire school. In front of the church building was a marble statue of a woman who was wearing long, flowing robes. Nyx, I blurted. Nefrit lifted one eyebrow in surprise. Yes, Zoe, that's a statue of our goddess, and behind that building is her temple. She motioned for me to walk with her down the sidewalk, and gestured expansively at the impressive campus that stretched before us. What is known today as the House of Night was built in the Neo-French Norman style, with stones imported from Europe. It originated in the mid-1920s as an Augustine monastery for the people of faith. Eventually it was converted into Caskia Hall, a private preparatory school for affluent human teenagers. When we decided we must open a school for our own in this part of the country, we bought it from Casca Hall 5 years ago. I only vaguely recalled the days when I had been in a stuck-up private school. Actually, the only reason I'd ever thought about it at all was that I'd remembered hearing the news that a whole herd of kids that went to Casca Hall had been busted for drugs, and how shocked the adults had been. Whatever. No one else had been shocked that those rich kids were majorly into drugs. I'm surprised they sold it to you guys, I said absently. Her laugh was low and a little dangerous. They didn't want to, but we made their arrogant headmaster an offer even he couldn't refuse. I wanted to ask her what she meant, but her laugh gave me a skin crawly feeling. And plus, I was busy. I couldn't stop staring. Okay, the first thing I noticed was that everyone who had a solid vampire tattoo was incredibly good looking. I mean, it was totally insane. Yes, I knew vampires were attractive. Everyone knew that. The most successful actors and actresses in the world were vampires. There were also dancers, musicians, authors, and singers. Vampires dominated the arts, which is one reason they had so much money, and also one reason, of many, that the people of faith considered them selfish and immoral, but really they're just jealous that they're not just as good looking. The people of faith would go and see their movies, plays, concerts, buy their books and their art, and at the same time they'd talk about them and look down on them. And God knows they'd never ever mix with them. Hello, can you say hypocrites? Anyway, being surrounded by so many totally gorgeous people made me want to crawl under a bench, even though many of them greeted Nefrit and smiled and said hello to me too. Between hesitantly returning their hellos, I snuck looks at the kids who walked by us. Each of them nodded respectfully to Nefrit. Several of them bowed formally to her and crossed their fists over their heart, which made Nefrit smile and bow in response. Okay, the kids weren't as gorgeous as the adults. Sure, they were nice looking. Interesting, actually, with their crescent moon outlines and their uniforms. It looked more like runaway designs than school clothes. But they didn't have that glossy, inhumanly attractive light that radiated from inside each of the adult vampires. Uh, I did notice that, as I suspected, their uniforms had a lot of basic black in them. You think that a group of people so up on the arts would recognize a cliche when one goes walking by in boring goth black? I'm just saying. I suppose if I was going to be honest, I'd have to admit it looked good on them. The black mixed with tiny plaid lines of deep purple, dark blue, and emerald green. Each uniform had an ornate design embroidered in gold or silver on either its jacket, breast pocket, or blouse pocket. I could tell that some of the designs were the same, but I couldn't see exactly what they were. Also, there was a weirdly large amount of kids with long hair. Seriously, the girls had long hair, the guys had long hair, the teachers had long hair, even the cats that wandered across the sidewalk from time to time were long-haired balls of fur. Odd. Good thing I talked myself out of getting my hair cut short, uh, duck butt style. Kyla had hers off in last week. I also noticed that the adults and kids um, had one other thing in common. Their eyes all lingered with obvious curiosity on my mark. Great. So I'm beginning my new life as an anomaly, which figured just about as much as it sucked. And that's the end of chapter 7. Gonna hit chapter 8 in just a wee minute. Are we? Yeah, I've got plenty of time. Yeah, it's not too long. Where's Big Boy? Is he still there? I think that's him in the corner. He blends in well, doesn't he? Be good to get better lighting on that camera. We'll do something about it, but back in a few minutes. All right, we're back, and we'll jump back into chapter 8. The part of the House of Night that held the dorms was way across campus, and we had a fairly long walk. Nefrit seemed to be walking slowly on purpose, giving me plenty of time to ask questions and gawk. Not that I minded, walking the length of the sprawling castle-like cluster of buildings, with Nefrit pointing out little details about um, what what gave me a sense of the place. It was weird, but in a good way, plus walking felt normal. Actually, as odd as it sounds, I felt like myself again. I wasn't coughing. My body didn't ache. My head had even stopped hurting. I was absolutely, totally not thinking about the disturbing scene I'd accidentally witnessed. I was forgetting it on purpose. The last thing I needed was to have it be more than a deal, more to deal with than a new life and a weird mark. So, blowjob forgotten. Deeply in denial, I told myself that if I hadn't been walking through the school campus at an ungodly hour of the night beside a vampire, I could almost pretend that I was the same today as I had been yesterday. Almost. Well, okay, maybe not even almost. But my head did feel better, and I was about ready to face my roommate when Nefrit finally opened the door to the girls' dorm. Inside was a surprise. I'm not sure what I expected. Maybe everything to be all black and creepy, but it was nice. Decorated in soft blue and antique yellow, with comfy couches and clumps of puffy pillows big enough to sit on, dotting the room like giant pastel M&Ms. The soft gaslight coming from several antique crystal chandeliers made the place look like a princess's castle. On the cream-coloured walls there were large oil paintings, all of them of ancient women who looked exotic and powerful. Fresh cut flowers, mostly roses, sat in crystal vases on end tables. They were cluttered with books and purses and fairly normal teenage girl stuff. I saw several flat screen TVs, several, and recognized the sounds of MTV's Real World coming from one of them. I took in all this fast, while I tried to smile and appear friendly to the girls who had shut up the instant I walked in the room and were now staring at me. Well, scratch that. They weren't exactly staring at me. They were staring at the mark on my forehead. Ladies, this is Zoe Redbird. Greet her and welcome her to the House of Night. For a second, I didn't think anyone was going to say anything, and I wanted to die of the new kid mortification. Then a girl stood up from the middle of the group that was clustered around one of the TVs. She was a tiny blonde and darn near perfect. Actually, she reminded me of a young version of Sarah Jessica Parker, who I don't like, by the by. She's just so annoying and unnaturally perky. Hi Zoe, welcome to your new home. The SJP look-alike smile was warm and genuine. She was clearly making an effort to make eye contact instead of gawk at my darkened-in mark. Instantly I felt bad for making a negative comparison to her. I'm Aphrodite, she said. Aphrodite? Okay, maybe I hadn't been too hasty in my comparison. How could anyone normal choose Aphrodite as their name? Please, talk about delusions of grandeur. I plastered a smile on my face, though, and said a bright, Hi, Aphrodite. Nefrit, would you like me to show Zoe to her room? Nefrit hesitated, which was really odd. Instead of answering right away, she just stood there and locked eyes with Aphrodite. Then, just as quickly as the silent stare-down had started, Nefrit's face broke into a wide smile. Thank you, Aphrodite. That would be lovely. I am Zoe's mentor, but I'm sure she would feel much more welcomed if someone her own age showed her the way to her room. Was that a flash of anger I saw through Aphrodite's eyes? No, I must have imagined it, or at least I would have believed I'd imagined it, if that weird new gut feeling of mine hadn't told me otherwise. And I did need my new intuition to clue me in that something was wrong, because Aphrodite laughed, and I recognized the sound of it. Feeling like someone had punched me in the gut, I realized that this girl, Aphrodite, had been the one I just watched with the guy in the hall. Aphrodite's laugh, followed by her perky. Of course, I'd be happy to show her around. You know, I'm always glad to help you, Neferit. Was fake and as cold as Pamela Anderson's humongously huge boobs. But Neferit just nodded in response and then turned to face me. I'll leave you now, Zoe, Neferit said, squeezing my shoulder. Aphrodite will take you to your room, and your new roommate can help you get ready for dinner. I'll see you in the dining room. She smiled her warm, mum-like smile, and I had the ridiculously childish urge to hug her and beg her not to leave me alone with Aphrodite. You'll be fine, she said, as if she could read my mind. You'll see, Zoe Bird. All will be well, she whispered, sounding like my grandma, and I had to blink hard not to cry. And she nodded a quick goodbye to Aphrodite and the other girls and left the room. The door closed with a muffled, dead sound. Oh, hell, I just want to go home. Come on, Zoe, the rooms are this way, Aphrodite said. She motioned for me to come with her up the wide stairs that curved to our right, and as we walked upstairs, I tried to ignore the buzz of voices that instantly erupted behind us. Neither of us spoke, and I felt so uncomfortable. I wanted to scream. Had she seen me back there in the hall? Well, I was sure as hell not going to mention it. Ever. As far as I was concerned, it never happened. I cleared my throat. The dorm seems nice. I mean, it's really pretty. Her eyes cut me sideways. It's better than nice or really pretty here. It's amazing. Oh, well, that's good to hear. She laughed. The sound was totally unpleasant, almost a sneer, and it crawled up the back of my neck, as it had when I'd first heard it. It's amazing here mostly because of me. I glanced at her, thinking she must be kidding, and I met her cold blue eyes. Yeah, you heard me right. This place is cool because I'm cool. OMG. What a bizarre thing for her to say. I didn't have a clue how to respond to a very stuck up piece of info. I mean, like I needed the stress of a fight with slutty Mrs. thinking she's all that, on top of a life species school change. And I still couldn't tell whether she knew it had been me watching her in the hall. Okay, I just wanted to find a way to fit in. I wanted to be able to call this new school home, so I decided to take the safest road and keep my mouth shut. Neither of us said anything more. The stairs led to a large hallway lined with doors. I held my breath when Aphrodite stopped before one that was painted a pretty light purple. But instead of knocking, she turned to face me. Her perfect face suddenly looked hateful and cold, and definitely not so pretty. Okay, here's the deal, Zoe. You have this weird mark, so everyone's talking about you and wondering what the fuck is up with you. She rolled her eyes, clutching her pearls dramatically, changing her voice so that she sounded really silly and gushing. Oh, this new girl has a coloured in mark. Whatever can it mean? Is she special? Does she have fabulous powers? Oh my, oh my. She dropped her hand from her throat and narrowed her eyes at me. Her voice went flat and her and mean as her gaze. Here's what's what. I'm it here. Things go my way. You want to, if you want to get along here, then you'd best remember that. If you don't, you'll be in for a world of shit. Okay, she was really starting to piss me off. Look, I said, I just got here. I'm not looking for trouble. I've no control over what people are saying about my mark. Her eyes narrowed. Ah, crap, was I going to have an actual fight with this girl? I've never been in a fight in my life. My stomach knotted up. I got ready to duck or run or whatever, just not get beat up. Then, just as quickly as she'd gone all scary and hateful, her face relaxed into a smile as she turned back into a sweet little blonde again. Not that I was fooled. Good, just so we understand each other. What? I understood she'd forgotten to take her meds. That was all I understood. Aphrodite didn't give me time to say anything. With one last, weirdly warm smile, she knocked on the door. Come on in, called a perky voice in Okie accent. Aphrodite opened the door. Hi, y'all. Oh my gosh, come in. Oh, I'm sorry, I won't do the accent. With a huge grin, my new roomie, also a blonde, rushed in, rushed up like a little countrified tornado. But the instant she saw Aphrodite, her grin slid from her face and she stopped hurrying forwards. I brought your new roommate to you. There was nothing technically wrong with Aphrodite's words, but her tone was hateful. She was putting on a terrible, fake Oklahoma accent. Stevie Ray Johnson, this is Zoe Redbird. Zoe Redbird, this is Stevie Ray Johnson. Now ain't we all nice and cozy like three little corns on a cob? I glanced at Stevie Ray. She looked like a terrified little rabbit. Thanks for showing me up here, Aphrodite, I talked quickly, moving towards Aphrodite, who automatically stepped back, which would put her out in the hall again. I'll see you around. I closed the door on her, and the look of surprise was just beginning to change to anger. Then I turned to Stevie Ray, who was still pale. What's with her? I asked. She's she's Even though I didn't know her all that well, I could tell that Stevie Ray was struggling with how much she should or shouldn't say. So I decided to help her. I mean, we're going to be roommates. She's a bitch, I said. Stevie Ray's eyes went round and she giggled. She's not very nice, that's for sure. She needs pharmaceutical help, that's for sure, I added, making her laugh some more. I think we're going to get along just fine, Zoe Redbird, she said, still smiling. Welcome to your new home. She stepped aside and made a sweeping arm gesture at the little room, like she was ushering me into a palace. I looked around and blinked several times. The first thing I saw was a life-sized Kenny Chesney poster that hung over the two beds, and a cowgirl, hat that rested on one of the bedside tables. The one that also had the old-fashioned gas lamp with a base shaped like a cowboy boot. Oh, nuh-uh. Stevie Ray was a total okie. Then she shocked me with a big hello hug, reminded me of a cute puppy with her short curly hair and her smiling round face. Zoe, I'm glad you're feeling better. I was so worried when I heard you'd hurt yourself. I'm really glad you're finally here. Thanks, I said, still staring around at what was my new room, feeling totally overwhelmed and weirdly on the edge of tears again. It's kind of scary, isn't it? Said Stevie Ray, watching me with big, serious blue eyes that were filled with sympathetic tears. I nodded, not trusting my voice. I know, I cried my whole first night. I swallowed back my own tears and asked, how long have you been here? 3 months, and man, I was glad when they told me I was getting a roommate. You knew I was coming? She nodded vigorously. Oh, yeah. Nefrite told me the day before yesterday that the tracker had sensed you and was going to mark you. I thought you'd be here yesterday, but then I heard you'd had an accident and been brought to the clinic. What happened? I shrugged and said, I was looking for my grandma and I fell and hit my head. I wasn't getting the weird feeling that told me to keep my mouth shut, but I wasn't sure how much I should say to Stevie Ray yet, and I was relieved when she nodded, as though she understood and didn't ask any more questions about the accident or mention my weird coloured mark. Your parents freaked when you got marked? Totally. Did yours? Actually, my mama was okay with it. She said anything that got me out of Henrietta was a good thing. Henrietta, Oklahoma? I asked, glad to move on to a subject that was not all about me. Sadly, yes. Stevie Ray flopped down on the bed in front of Kenny Chesney and motioned for me to sit on the one across the room from her. I did, and felt a little jolt of surprise when I realised I was sitting on my cool, hot pink and green Ralph Lauren comforter from home. I looked at the little oak table and end table and blinked. There was my annoying, ugly alarm clock, nearly glasses for when I'm sick and uh, when I'm sick of wearing my contacts, and a picture of my grandma and me from last summer, and the bookshelves behind my computer on my side of the room, and I saw my Gossip Girls and Bubble series books, along with some of my favourites, including Bram Stoker's Dracula, which is more than a little ironic, some CDs, my laptop, and oh my dear sweet lord, my Monsters Inc. figurines. How incredibly embarrassing. My backpack was sitting on the floor next to my bed. Your grandma brought your stuff up here. She's really nice, Stevie Ray said. She's more than nice. She's brave as hell to have faced my mum and her stupid husband to get this stuff from me. I can only imagine the overdramatic scene my mum must have caused. I sighed and shook my head. I guess I'm lucky. At least my mamma was cool about all of this. Stevie Ray pointed to the outline of the crescent moon on her forehead. Even if my daddy lost every little bit of his mind, me being his only baby girl and all, she shrugged and giggled. My three brothers thought it was awesome, wanted to know if I was going to help them get vampire chicks. She rolled her eyes. Stupid boys. Stupid boys, I echoed and smiled at her. If she thought boys were stupid, and she and I would get along fine. Mostly now I'm okay with all of this. I mean, the classes are weird, but I like them, especially Taekwondo class. I kind of like to kick butt, she grinned mischievously, like a little blonde elf. I like the uniforms, which totally shocked me at first. I mean, would anyone expect to like school uniforms? But we can add stuff to them, make them unique. They don't have to look like typical, stuck up, boring school uniforms. There were some seriously hot guys here, even if boys are stupid. Her eyes sparkled, mostly because I'm so darn glad to be out of Henrietta. I don't mind all the other stuff, even if Tulsa's kind of scary because it's so big. Tulsa isn't scary, I say automatically. Unlike so many kids from our suburb of Broken Arrow, I actually knew my way around Tulsa, thanks to what my grandma liked to call field tripping with her. You just have to know where to go. There's a great bead gallery where you can make your own jewellery downtown on Brady Street, and next door to that is Lola's and the Bowery. She has the best desserts in town. Cherry Street is cool too. We're not far from there now. Actually, we're right by there. We're right by their awesome Philemon Museum and Utica Square. There's some excellent shopping there, and I suddenly realised what I was saying. Did vampire kids get to mingle with regular kids? I searched my memory. No, I'd never seen kids with crescent moon outlines hanging around the Philbrook or Utica Gap or Banana Republic or Starbucks. I'm probably butchering these names. Apologies, Americans. I'd never seen them in the movies. Hell, I'd never even seen a vampire kid before today. So would they keep us locked up here for 4 years? Feeling a little short of breath and claustrophobic, I asked, do we ever get out of here? Yeah, but there's all sorts of rules you have to follow. Rules? Like what? You can't wear any part of your school uniform. She suddenly broke off. Shoot, that reminds me. We have to hurry. Dinner's only in a few minutes, and you need to change. She jumped up and started to rummage through the closet that was on my side of the room, chattering at me from over her shoulder the whole time. Nefrid had some clothes delivered here last night. Don't worry about sizes not being right. Somehow they always know what size will be before they actually see us. It's kind of freaky how the adult vamps know way more than they should. Uh, anyway, don't be scared. I was serious before when I said the uniforms aren't awful as you think they'll be. You can add your own stuff to them, like me. I looked at her. I really looked at her. She was wearing a pair of honest to God Roper jeans. You know, the kind those AG kids wear that are way too tight and have no back pockets. How anyone can think no back pockets and tightness was cute, I'll honestly never understand. Stevie Ray was totally skinny, and the jeans even made her butt look wide. I knew before I looked at the girl's feet what she'd be wearing. Cowboy boots. I glanced down inside. Yep, brown leather, flat-heeled, pointy-tipped cowboy boots. Tucked into her countrified jeans was a black long-sleeved cotton blouse that had an expensive look of something that you'd find at Saks or Neiman Marcus versus the cheaper see-through shirts that overpriced Abercrombie tries to make us believe aren't slutty. When I glanced over, or when she glanced over at me, I saw that she had double pierced ears with silver loop hoops in them. I turned and held out one hand in a black. Hold on. She turned and held out in one hand a black blouse like the one she had on and a pullover sweater in another. I decided that even though the country look wasn't for me, it was kind of cute with her mixture of hayseed and chic. Here you go. Just throw one of these over your jeans and we'll be ready to go. The flickering light from the cowboy boots caught on a streak of silver embroidery that was on the breast pocket of the sweater that she was holding out. I got up and took the two shirts, holding the sweater up so I could see the front of it better. The silver embroidery was in the shape of a spiral that glittered around and around in a delicate circle that would rest over my heart. It's your sign, Stevie Ray said. Our sign? Yeah, each class. Here they call them third formers, fourth formers, fifth formers, and sixth formers. They have their own sign. We're third formers. Our sign is the silver labyrinth of the goddess Nyx. What does it mean? I asked, more to myself than to her as I traced the finger around the circles. It stands for our new beginning as we start walking the path of night and learn the ways of the goddess and the possibilities of our new life. I looked up at her, suddenly surprised that she was so serious. She grinned a little shyly at me and shrugged her shoulders. It was one of the first things you learn in Vampire Sociology 101, as the class Nephite teaches, and it sure beats the heck out of the boring classes I was taking at Henrietta High, home of the Fighting Hens. Ugh, Fighting Hens. What kind of mascot's that? She shook her head and rolled her eyes while I laughed. Anyway, I heard Nephite is your mentor, which is really lucky. She hardly takes on any new kids, and besides being High Priestess, she's the coolest teacher here. What she didn't say is that I'm not just lucky, I'm special with my weird coloured in mark. Which reminds me, Stevie Ray, why haven't you asked me about my mark? I mean, I appreciate you not bombarding me with 100 questions, but all the way up here, anyone who saw me stared at my mark. Aphrodite mentioned it almost the second we were alone. You haven't even looked at it really. Why? Then she finally, uh, what, then she did finally look at my forehead before she shrugged, and our eyes met again. You're my roommate. I figured you'd tell me when you were, what was up with it when you were ready. One thing growing up in a small town like Henrietta taught me was that to mind your own business if you want someone to stay your friend. Well, we're going to be rooming together for 4 years. She paused, and with a gap in her words sat a big, ugly, unsaid truth that we'd be roommates for 4 years only if both of us survived the change. Stevie Ray swallowed hard and finished in a rush. I guess what I'm trying to say is I want us to be friends. I smiled at her. She looked so young and hopeful, so nice and normal, and not at all what I imagined a vampire kid would be. I felt a little stirring of hope. Maybe I could find a way to fit in here. I want to be friends too. Yay for that. I swear she looked like a wiggly puppy again. But come on, hurry, I don't want to be late. She gave me a shove towards the door that sat between two closets before turning over, uh, hurried over to a makeup mirror on her computer desk and started brushing her short hair. I ducked inside to find a tiny bathroom and quickly pulled off my baggy Tigers t-shirt and put on the cotton blouse over the silk knit sweater. That was a deep, pretty shade of purple with little black plaid lines going through it. I was just getting ready to go back to the room and grab my backpack so I could fix my face and hair with makeup and stuff that I'd bought. When I glanced in the mirror over the sink, my face was still white, but it lost the scary, unhealthy paleness of earlier. My hair looked insane, all wild and uncombed. I could faintly see the slim, dark line of stitches just above my temple, but it was the sapphire-coloured mark that caught my eye. While I stared at it, entranced by its exotic beauty, the bathroom light caught the silver labyrinth embroidered over my heart. I decided that the two symbols somehow matched, even though they were different shapes, different colours. But did I match them? Did I match this strange new world? I squeezed my eyes tight and hoped desperately that whatever we were eating for dinner, oh, please let it not be any blood drinking, couldn't disagree with my already screwed up nervous stomach. Oh no, I whispered to myself. It would just be my luck to get a raging case of diarrhea. End of chapter 8. We're going to leave it there. We'll pick chapter 9 up another time. Grand. I'll get these up on YouTube. And thanks for listening.